On a gray Tuesday morning in Atlanta, Jessica Taylor opened her inbox to an email with no subject, just attachments. 70 of them. Every click shattered another piece of her heart. But what broke her wasn't the images, it was the one sentence that followed. "I'm his next wife." Jessica Taylor never liked checking her email early in the morning, especially not before her coffee had a chance to work its magic. But that morning was different. Something felt off, an itch beneath the surface of her perfect suburban life in Atlanta. The house was quiet, too quiet. Her husband, Michael, had left early for a work trip in Charlotte, or so he claimed. Their teenage son, Kyle, was still asleep upstairs, and the golden retriever snored gently at her feet. Nothing was technically wrong, and yet something was. She opened her laptop and saw it. A new email with no subject line, no sender name, just an address she didn't recognize. Normally, she'd delete that kind of thing without thinking, but her thumb paused midair. It was instinct or maybe fate. She clicked. Her breath caught. The screen filled with images, attachments. 70 of them. She clicked the first, then the second, and the third. There was Michael. Her Michael. Shirtless, lying on hotel beds, kissing another woman, grinning at the camera like a boy in love. She wore lingerie. He wore Betrayal like a second skin. The woman was half Jessica's age, long black curls, sharp cheekbones, and a smug expression in every single frame. The photos weren't just proof, they were trophies, taken with care, framed with intention. And below the last image, a single line of text weighted like a knife. "I'm his next wife." Jessica didn't scream. She didn't cry. Her hand didn't tremble. It just slowly moved to close the laptop. Silence bloomed in the kitchen like smoke. Outside, the world continued as if nothing had happened. Birds chirped. A lawnmower buzzed in the neighbor's yard. Somewhere a child laughed. But inside Jessica's chest, something cracked wide open. She didn't know how long she sat there. Minutes, maybe hours. The sun had shifted when she finally moved again. She walked to the sink, poured her untouched coffee down the drain, and stared at the backsplash tile like it had the answers. She had given this man 20 years. 2 decades of loyalty, compromise, motherhood, and silent sacrifices. They had built a home, not just in bricks, but in memories. She'd held him through job losses, celebrated his promotions, forgiven his distance when work pulled him away. But this was premeditated cruelty. Still, she didn't lose her composure. She didn't rage through the house, throwing pictures or shattering glasses. That's not who Jessica Taylor was. She was raised by a Southern mother who taught her, "Never let anyone see you bleed, honey. Dignity is armor." And right now, dignity was all she had left. She walked into the living room, picked up her phone, and dialed a number she hadn't used in a long time, Elena Hayes, her best friend from college, and now a family law attorney. Elena answered on the second ring. "Jess, I need to see you," Jessica said, her voice flat. "Today. Now, if possible." There was a pause. Elena didn't ask why. She simply said, "Come to the office." 30 minutes later, Jessica sat in a sleek chair across from her old friend. She slid the laptop across the desk and said, "Only go to the inbox." Elena opened it, clicked through a few images, then leaned back slowly in her chair. "I'm so sorry, Jess." "I don't want sorry," Jessica said. "I want options." Elena's eyes sharpened. "Okay, then let's talk about what happens next." And just like that, Jessica began shifting. Not from wife to ex-wife, that would come later. She shifted from betrayed to prepared, from devastated to decisive. Elena outlined steps, documenting the affair, securing finances, protecting Kyle's well-being, and setting legal boundaries before confrontation. Jessica listened without interrupting, memorizing every detail like a soldier in training. She wouldn't act out of emotion. Not yet. That's what women like the Mistress expected. Screaming, crying, pleading. But Jessica wouldn't give her that satisfaction. If this woman thought she had already won, declaring herself the next wife, then she clearly didn't understand the woman Michael had underestimated for 20 years. Jessica returned home with a plan. Michael was scheduled to be back by Friday evening. That gave her 3 days. 3 days to gather documents, skin bank statements, and secure copies of every asset, every deed, every account. She called her cousin who worked in IT to help secure her digital files. She contacted a discreet financial advisor. She even scheduled a therapy appointment for Kyle and then for herself. That night, as she tucked Kyle into bed, he looked up at her with sleepy eyes and said, "Hey, Mom, you okay?" She smiled and kissed his forehead. "I'm just tired, sweetheart, but everything's going to be all right." And she meant it, because by the time Michael walked through the front door that Friday, flowers in hand, a fake smile on his face, and business trip excuses on his tongue, Jessica was no longer the woman he had left behind. She greeted him with warmth, took the flowers, set them in a vase, and asked about his trip. He lied, easily, smoothly, as if those 70 photos didn't exist, as if the woman in red lace hadn't declared war with a single sentence. Jessica smiled. She had spent 3 days preparing for this moment, not to confront him, not yet, but to let him believe he still held the power. She let him eat. She let him sleep. She let him relax in the home she now legally protected. He didn't know that a lawyer had already filed the necessary paperwork, that the house was now out of reach, that the accounts were shifting in silence. Because when Jessica Taylor played the long game, she played to win. And the mistress? She had no idea who she was messing with. Jessica kept the smile on her face like a porcelain mask, fragile, perfect, and carefully crafted to conceal the fire behind her eyes. For the next 2 days, she played her role as the attentive wife, cooking Michael's favorite meals, listening to his weekend plans, laughing at his dry jokes. He thought she was the same woman he left behind. In truth, that woman had been buried the moment Jessica clicked the final image in that email. Michael was careful, too careful. He never left his phone unattended. He kept his calendar vague, his stories rehearsed. He hadn't slipped up, not yet, but Jessica didn't need him to. The photos were enough. The email was her confirmation. The smug arrogance of the mistress told her everything she needed to know. They were bold now, bold and stupid. On Sunday afternoon, while Michael was showering, Jessica slipped quietly into his office. She didn't expect to find much. Michael had long since moved anything sensitive to cloud storage. But old habits die hard, and some part of him still kept a backup external drive in the drawer. She plugged it in, copied the files, and returned everything exactly the way it was. She didn't open anything. Not yet. That evening, she sat on the back porch sipping a glass of wine, pretending to scroll through Pinterest recipes. In reality, she was uploading everything to an encrypted folder she shared with Elena, just in case, not for revenge, for protection. The thing that stung wasn't just the betrayal, it was the humiliation. Jessica knew the woman in the photos wasn't just trying to steal her husband. She was trying to erase her, to mock everything Jessica had built, her marriage, her home, her family. That line, "I'm his next wife," wasn't a warning. It was a taunt. Michael stepped outside and sat across from her, stretching like a man who thought he had no worries in the world. "This week was brutal," he sighed. "Can't wait to just relax with my family." Jessica nodded. "You deserve it." He smiled, pleased by her sweetness. He didn't notice the way her fingers tightened around the stem of her wine glass. He didn't know she had found out about the Airbnb reservations, the out-of-town receipts hidden in his golf bag, the text messages she'd retrieved through his old iPad that still synced to their cloud. She didn't need to hack anything. Michael had left breadcrumbs everywhere. Men like him always did. On Monday, after Michael left for work, Jessica met Elena again. This time, she walked in not as a client, but as a woman with a strategy. "I want the house protected first," she said. "It already is," Elena confirmed. "You're on the deed alone. The equity's in your name. If he tries anything, we'll freeze it." Jessica nodded. "Next, I want to secure Kyle's college fund." "Done. We've moved it." "Good. Now," Jessica hesitated for the first time, "what about the woman?" Elena arched a brow. "What about her?" She's not going to stop. She's delusional. She thinks she's already won. I want her to see exactly how wrong she is. Not with drama, but with facts. Elena leaned forward, a slow grin forming. Then we use what she gave us, her arrogance. That night, Jessica opened the drive she'd copied and sorted through the files. Most of it was nothing, business reports, spreadsheets, old photos. But then she found a folder labeled Jasmine. Her name, the Mistress. She clicked it open. There were love letters, dozens of them, all from her husband. Photos from multiple weekends together. Plane tickets, booking receipts, and worse, plans. Messages that discussed starting fresh, breaking it off clean, and getting Jessica out slowly. She wasn't just a fling. She was a plan in progress. Jessica closed the folder, stood up, and walked to her bedroom. She looked around at the place she had decorated over the years. She touched the comforter she'd chosen during their last anniversary trip. She stared at the framed photo on the wall, her and Michael smiling at Niagara Falls, arms wrapped around each other like they were still whole. She took it down, quietly. Over the next few days, Jessica made subtle changes. She contacted a realtor just to appraise the house, secretly, to gauge its current value. She restructured her health insurance. She changed her emergency contacts at work from Michael to her sister. Everything she did without raising suspicion. And Michael remained blissfully unaware. On Friday, a package arrived at the house. Michael brought it inside, thinking it was one of Kyle's books. But when he saw the handwriting, he paused. It was from Jasmine. Jessica walked into the kitchen just as he was opening it. Inside was a photo album. Yes, a printed album. Dozens of the same pictures for the email, now on glossy paper, arranged like a twisted love story. Some had captions written in red pen. One page had a note that read, "Can't wait to live in our house." Jessica looked at him calmly. Michael froze. She tilted her head slightly. Something wrong? He hesitated, then laughed nervously. It's just some spam mail. Weird stuff. She stepped forward, took the album from his hands, and flipped through the pages slowly. Her face didn't change. "It's very detailed spam," she said softly. Michael's eyes widened. "Jess, She shut the album and placed it on the table. "I saw them already," she said. "The email, the photos, the message. I've seen all of it." He went pale. "Jessica, listen, it wasn't serious, I swear to God. It started when we were fighting and..." She held up a hand. "I don't want an explanation, Michael. Not right now. You've already said enough. I just wanted you to know I know." And then she turned and walked out of the room, leaving him standing there with the album clutched to his chest like a man caught in a burning house with no door to escape. He didn't know yet that she'd already spoken to lawyers, that the financials were secure, that his mistress's delusion had accidentally built Jessica's entire case for her. But he would find out, and soon. Michael barely slept that night. He sat on the edge of the bed long after Jessica had closed the door to the guest room, running a hand through his thinning hair, his mind racing through excuses. His charm, which had always been his greatest asset, now felt useless. Jessica hadn't yelled. She hadn't thrown anything or begged for answers. She'd simply told him, "I know," and that somehow was worse. He didn't know what she was thinking, what she was planning, and the unknown scared him more than her silence. Meanwhile, Jessica lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. There was no satisfaction in his fear. Not yet. She knew Michael. He would try to manipulate, deflect by time, but this time, she wasn't going to give him any. She had already spent years giving him time to grow up, to reconnect, to remember who they used to be. She got nothing in return but betrayal. And now, 70 printed pages of it sat quietly in her kitchen drawer. The next morning, Jessica made pancakes like it was any other Saturday. Kyle was up early for a soccer scrimmage, so she moved through the kitchen with practiced ease. Michael sat at the table, watching her, unsure whether to speak or pretend everything was fine. Jessica didn't offer him a hint either way. When Kyle left with his friend's mom for the game, Michael finally spoke. Can we talk? She flipped another pancake onto the stack. I'm listening. He leaned forward. Jess, I made a mistake. I know that. I screwed up. But it didn't mean anything. Jasmine was just... Jasmine, she repeated quietly, setting the spatula down. He hesitated. She was just a distraction. I never planned to leave you. You have to believe me. Jessica turned to face him. Her expression was unreadable. You told her you were leaving me, that you were getting me out slowly, that you were building a new life. Is that what a distraction sounds like? Michael's mouth opened and closed, searching for something credible to say. She continued, Do you even realize how delusional she is? She sent me a wedding timeline, a color scheme. She said she wanted my house. She's crazy, Michael said quickly. She's obsessed. No, Michael. She's confident. There's a difference. She thought she already won. He stood up, pacing. Jess, come on. We can fix this. You and me, we've been through worse. She let out a soft laugh. No, Michael. We haven't. Nothing tops this. He crossed his arms. So what? That's it? You're just done? No second chance. She met his eyes then. You didn't give me a second chance, did you? You didn't come to me when things felt wrong. You didn't fight for us. You built another life behind my back and handed her a role she hadn't earned. He looked away. Jessica's voice lowered. You made your choices. Now, I'm making mine. He sank back into the chair like the weight of her words had finally reached his spine. That night, he slept on the couch without asking. By Monday, Michael tried a different approach. Flowers, a handwritten note, a breakfast tray with her favorite coffee blend and banana walnut muffins from the cafe near her office. Jessica accepted it all with polite gratitude, and then left the house for a meeting with Elena. I confronted him, she told her attorney. No yelling, no chaos, just truth. Elena nodded, impressed. That's going to work in your favor. You're calm, controlled. It's clear who's the stable parent here. Jessica sat straighter. What's next? We proceed quietly. We'll file in stages. It'll be in the system before he even knows. Jessica bit her lip. He hasn't brought up Jasmine since the confrontation. He's avoiding it. Of course he is. He's hoping you'll cool off. That this will blow over. Jessica nodded slowly. Then we don't give him time to hope. That afternoon, she began separating their lives piece by piece. She opened her own bank account and had her paycheck redirected. She met with Kyle's guidance counselor to discuss support options in case of an eventual custody change. She even scheduled an appraisal of their home, pretending it was just for curiosity. Every step she took was quiet, purposeful, powerful. That week, Michael started trying harder. Date night suggestions, offers to cook. Let's take a trip, he said one evening, showing her brochures for couples resorts in Arizona. We need a reset. Jessica smiled. That's sweet, but we should save our money. Vacations won't fix betrayal. He flinched. Later that night, when Michael went to bed early, Jessica sat at the kitchen table, looking at the album again. She flipped slowly through the pages, taking in every smirk, every half-dress shot, every lipstick mark Jasmine had flaunted. It wasn't the photos that broke her, it was the confidence. Jessica wasn't naive. Women like Jasmine didn't just want the man, they wanted the throne. The title, the house, the image. Jessica could see her type clearly now. Jasmine had mistaken a secret affair for a victory march. She was wrong. Jessica took out a pen and sticky notes. One by one, she labeled every damaging photo, caption, and quote that could be used as evidence. Elena had suggested building a narrative for court if it came to it. A calm, methodical dismantling of Michael's credibility. That's what she was building now. And on the last page, the one with Jasmine's red handwriting declaring, "Can't wait to live in our house," Jessica carefully stuck a note that read, "You'll be lucky to get a restraining order instead." She didn't speak those words out loud. She didn't need to. The storm was coming, and it would arrive with paperwork, not punches. The official divorce petition was filed on a Thursday morning. Jessica sat in the courthouse parking lot for a moment after it was done, watching as everyday people passed by. Parents holding toddlers, lawyers juggling coffee and case files, couples holding hands, oblivious to the battles other people were quietly fighting. She had just triggered a silent detonation under the life she'd spent 2 decades building. And yet, she didn't feel broken. She felt lighter, focused. Every decision she had made over the past 2 weeks, each step taken in silence, had been leading here. Her attorney Elena had made it clear. Once the petition was served, Michael would be forced to face reality. No more pretending. No more guilt-tripping. It would all be on paper. And if he pushed back, well, Jessica had 70 glossy reasons to support her claims of emotional abandonment and infidelity. Jasmine's little gift had turned out to be more valuable than she'd ever intended. Jessica went home and waited. 3 days passed. Michael didn't know the papers were coming. She had arranged for them to be delivered to his office. She didn't want to risk a scene in front of Kyle or the neighbors. No shouting. No furniture flying across the living room. Just a plain envelope slid across a mahogany desk while he was sipping his 3rd black coffee of the day. When the text finally came, it was brief. "What the hell, Jessica?" She stared at the message for a long time before locking her phone and going back to folding Kyle's laundry. That evening, he came home late. His footsteps were heavier than usual. His face red. His jaw tight. He dropped his keys on the counter and walked into the living room like a man preparing for war. "You blindsided me," he said through gritted teeth. Jessica looked up from her book. "Did I?" "Yes, you did," he snapped. "You didn't even talk to me about it. You just filed. Like our whole marriage was garbage." She set the book down gently. "You didn't talk to me either, Michael. You talked to Jasmine. You took her on trips. You made her promises. You gave her pieces of my life without asking." He didn't respond. She stood and walked past him, pausing only once at the kitchen doorway. "You're angry because I made a decision without you. Funny, isn't it? That's exactly how I felt every time you lied to me." He didn't follow her. He didn't say another word that night. The next morning, he was gone before she woke up. Jessica sat at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee, staring at the empty chair across from her. For the first time in years, she realized she didn't miss his presence. In fact, the silence felt safe, clean. Kyle noticed the tension, of course. Teenagers aren't blind. But he was old enough to know when not to ask questions. And Jessica promised herself he'd never be dragged into the drama. Whatever happened, he would be shielded. That afternoon, Elena called with an update. "He's trying to stall," she said. "His lawyer is claiming the affair wasn't serious, that it had already ended. They want mediation instead of court." Jessica smiled coldly. "Of course they do." "You don't have to accept it," Elena said. "You've got a solid case. The evidence, the timeline, the financials, it all points in your favor. We can push this through the courts if you want to make it airtight." Jessica thought for a moment. "No, let's see what they offer. I want to know how little he thinks I'm worth." The next week was filled with quiet maneuvers. Michael moved into a rented apartment nearby. Jessica let him take his suits, a few books, and his golf clubs. She didn't fight over any of it. Let him keep the image if he wanted. It wouldn't change the reality. She heard through mutual friends that Jasmine was furious. Apparently, Michael had pulled back suddenly. Stopped calling, stopped texting. Word was he told her things were complicated, that he needed space, that Jessica had turned cold and legal. Jasmine had posted cryptic Instagram stories, black screens with sad music, poetic captions about being lied to, and vague threats about exposing the truth. Jessica didn't care. That girl's little drama posts couldn't touch her anymore. She had outgrown the games. One evening, while Michael picked up Kyle for dinner, Jessica sat on the back porch and opened her laptop. The court documents were moving forward. The financials were frozen in her favor. The house was protected. Custody would likely go her way. She had won, not by screaming or begging, but by planning, by staying calm, and by using the very weapons they'd handed her. Her inbox dinged with a new email. She clicked it open. It was from Jasmine. "You're not strong. You're just bitter. You don't love him anymore, you just don't want me to have him. Jessica stared at the message for a few seconds, then hit delete. No response. No reaction. Let Jasmine scream into the void. Let her try to provoke a response. Jessica had already won the game. Jasmine didn't even know she was playing. This wasn't about Michael anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. This was about reclaiming the life she'd built, the woman she used to be before years of compromise, neglect, and betrayal chipped away at her confidence. Jessica Taylor was coming back, stronger, smarter, and untouchable. And no matter how many photos Jasmine sent, no matter how many delusions she clung to, she would never get the life Jessica had already walked away from, on her own terms. Jessica didn't tell anyone about the email from Jasmine. There was no need to dignify it with a discussion. Let the woman believe she still had power. Let her believe Jessica was shaken. That illusion worked in Jessica's favor. As long as they were underestimating her, she remained 5 steps ahead. Michael, meanwhile, was unraveling. He had started texting more often, some messages sweet, others defensive, all of them frantic in tone. At first, he sent links to articles about healing after betrayal, as though a few blog posts could undo the mess he'd created. Then came the memories. Remember our trip to Charleston? I still think about the night Kyle was born. You were always my best friend. Jessica read them silently, responding only when necessary, and never emotionally. This wasn't a man trying to heal a marriage. This was a man desperate to stop the bleeding before it damaged his reputation. By now, their friends knew. Word spread quietly, as it always does in close-knit communities. Michael's co-workers whispered. Neighbors nodded more cautiously. Women who once envied Jessica's marriage now looked at her with quiet solidarity. One morning, she ran into Carol, the PDA chair at the grocery store. Carol hesitated, then leaned in and said softly, "I always thought something was off about him. I just didn't want to say it." Jessica smiled politely. "It's fine. I saw it late, but not too late." She passed Carol in the produce aisle like nothing had changed. But inside, Jessica realized how much had changed. She was no longer hiding behind Michael's shadow, no longer working overtime to protect his image. His lies were his burden now. The mediation was scheduled for midweek. Jessica arrived in a navy blue blazer and jeans, her hair neatly pinned, her expression unreadable. Elena walked beside her like a general entering the war room. Michael was already inside, sitting stiffly next to his lawyer. He wore a suit, his professional armor, but his hands fidgeted under the table. He glanced at Jessica, maybe hoping for a smile, some flicker of softness. He got nothing. The mediator began with introductions, formalities, then came the terms. Jessica's attorney presented her stance clearly. She would keep the house, full custody of Kyle with visitation rights to Michael, and no spousal support. Just a clean break, no debt, no drama. Michael's lawyer scoffed. "She's asking for everything." Elena responded smoothly. "She's asking for what's hers. The home is in her name. The assets are jointly earned, and she's entitled to a significant portion. She's offering no alimony. Take that for what it's worth." Michael leaned forward. "I just want to be a part of my son's life." Jessica finally spoke. "Then you should have thought of that before making someone else your priority." He went quiet. After a long pause, the mediator asked if they could move on. Terms were outlined, compromises floated, and documents referenced. It felt more like a business transaction than the ending of a 20-year marriage. But that was fine with Jessica. This was no longer about emotion. It was about closure. 3 hours later, they had a preliminary agreement. Nothing final yet, but close. Michael looked exhausted. Jessica looked untouched. As they stepped outside, he followed her to the parking lot. "Jess," he said quietly, "I never stopped loving you." She turned to him. Her voice was low and even. "You stopped respecting me. You stopped protecting what we built. Love without those things is useless." He opened his mouth to respond, but she was already getting into her car. She didn't slam the door. She didn't peel away in anger. She just left him standing there in the sun, holding pieces of a future he had already thrown away. Later that evening, Kyle returned from a friend's house. He noticed the new energy in the house right away. It wasn't joy, but it was peace. Jessica was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with music playing softly in the background. She looked up and smiled. "You hungry?" Kyle shrugged. "I could eat." He didn't ask about the divorce. He didn't need to. Kids always know. They just wait for the adults to catch up. Over dinner, they talked about school, soccer, and his upcoming science fair. Jessica listened attentively, laughed when appropriate, and took mental notes to email his teacher later. It was the kind of night they hadn't had in months. Quiet, real whole. She walked upstairs after dinner and opened her bedroom closet. For the first time in years, she truly looked at the clothes hanging there. The dresses she wore to Michael's office parties. The sweater he once bought her for their anniversary. The heels she only wore when he asked her to dress up for his clients. She began pulling them out one by one and laying them on the bed. Not in anger, in release. She would donate some, toss others, but the symbolism mattered more than the wardrobe itself. She was shedding a life that no longer fit, a woman she no longer recognized. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Jasmine. "You can have him. He's a liar to both of us. I don't want this anymore." Jessica stared at the screen, her fingers hovering. Then she typed back for the first and only time. "You never had him." And she blocked the number. For good. A week passed, then another. Michael had stopped calling. Maybe because he realized it was over, or maybe because Jasmine had made her own exit. Either way, the silence suited Jessica. It wasn't cold, it was calm. A kind of calm she hadn't felt in years. The house felt different now. Not because anything had changed physically, but because the energy had shifted. Jessica had reclaimed it. Her kitchen no longer echoed with tension. Her bedroom wasn't a war zone of turned backs and unspoken resentments. Her living room was a place she could breathe in again. One Saturday morning, she woke up and realized she didn't feel dread, just sunlight. She made pancakes for Kyle, real ones, none of the frozen kind. He sat at the kitchen table, smiling through syrup, and said, "You seem happier now." Jessica paused. "You notice that?" "Yeah, you laugh more." She nodded slowly, stirring the batter again. "I guess I do." Kyle was still young, still tender, but he was old enough to understand what it meant to lose a family, and maybe what it meant to build a better one in its place. Later that day, Jessica decided to do something for herself. Not just the surface stuff. Not a haircut, not a manicure. She took her laptop to the sunroom, pulled up her old design files, and stared at them like they were artifacts from another lifetime. She had once dreamed of opening a boutique interior design firm. She'd started sketches, built sample portfolios, even pitched a few ideas to friends and local cafes. But that dream got shelved. Michael said it was impractical. Said the timing wasn't right. Said they needed her to focus on the home, on Kyle, on supporting his firm. And she believed him. Now, sitting in the golden afternoon light, she reopened those sketches. Some were raw. Some were brilliant. All were hers. She emailed one of her old contacts from a local home renovation store, someone who had once asked if she'd be open to freelance staging. She wrote the email, simply, "Hi, Rachel. I don't know if you're still looking for freelance design help, but I'm stepping back into that world. Would love to connect if the timing's right." The reply came 2 hours later. "Jessica, yes, we've actually had 2 projects we needed help with. Let's talk this week." She exhaled like she'd been holding that breath for years. Monday came. The mediation had turned into finalization. Michael had signed the preliminary agreement. Jessica signed without flinching. Her terms were all intact. Full custody. The house. No alimony. Clean break. Her lawyer smiled, impressed by her poise. "You did this with such grace," Elena said. Jessica didn't gloat. She didn't even smile. She just nodded. "I had no other choice." That night, as she filed the papers in a cabinet under legal, she felt no triumph. Just peace. Victory wasn't loud. It was silent. Soft. Healing. A few days later, she was walking out of the grocery store when she spotted him. Michael. He looked thinner. Older, somehow. like someone had wrung the arrogance out of him. He saw her and froze, half hoping she wouldn't notice, half desperate to be seen. "Jess," he said, walking over. She turned slowly, not unkind, just aware. "Hi. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. Truly." She studied him for a moment. "That's a good place to start. For your next relationship." He nodded, shame in every line of his face. "I miss Kyle." "You have a visitation schedule," she said. "Follow it. Show up. Be better." "I'm trying." "Try harder." She didn't say it cruelly. She didn't owe him softness. But she did owe Kyle a father who was either fully present or not present at all. He stepped back. "You look different." "I am." He left after that. Not because he wanted to, but because he didn't know how to stay in the presence of someone he couldn't manipulate anymore. By the end of the month, Jessica's life had taken shape in ways she didn't expect. Kyle was thriving. He brought home a Student of the Month certificate and shyly handed it to her. Rachel from the staging company offered her a 3-month project for a local realtor. Real work, real money, real purpose. Jessica accepted, built a small home office, and filled it with light. The kind of light you can only create when no one's casting a shadow over you anymore. And then came the final letter in the mail, divorce finalized, certified by the county clerk. She held it in her hand for a moment, then laid it on the dining table. No tears, no drama, just a deep inhale. That night, she and Kyle made pizza together. Real pizza, with flour all over the counters and mozzarella under their fingernails. When they sat down to eat, Kyle asked, "Do you think we'll be okay?" Jessica smiled. "I don't just think so. I know so." And for the first time in years, she wasn't just saying it to convince herself. She meant it. Jessica didn't realize how much space Michael had occupied in her life until he was gone, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. For years, her thoughts had orbited around him. What he wanted for dinner, whether he'd come home in a mood, what excuses she'd have to make to avoid confrontation. It had become muscle memory, survival instinct. But now, without that gravitational pull, her thoughts were free. And they drifted somewhere they hadn't been in a long time, toward herself. It began with small rituals. She started waking up before the alarm, not from anxiety, but from the quiet thrill of routine she created for herself. She lit candles in the morning. She played jazz while cooking. She wore lipstick again, nothing bold, just enough to remind herself she was still a woman, not just someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's shadow. One morning, while flipping through an old photo album, Jessica found a picture from her college days. She had wild curls then and wore oversized sweaters with combat boots. She looked like someone who had ideas, someone who questioned things. She realized she hadn't seen that girl in years. But maybe she wasn't gone. Maybe she was just buried under the weight of compromise. Kyle was watching cartoons in the other room when the doorbell rang. Jessica wasn't expecting anyone. She glanced through the peephole and froze. It was Jasmine. Not smug, not dressed like she was ready to win a pageant or ruin someone's marriage. Just plain jeans, a hoodie, and eyes rimmed in fatigue. Jessica opened the door, but didn't step back to let her in. Jasmine cleared her throat. "Can I talk to you? Please?" Jessica crossed her arms. "About what?" "About everything." Jessica studied her for a long moment, then finally opened the door wider. 5 minutes. They sat at the kitchen table. Jessica didn't offer coffee. She didn't need this to feel like a reunion. Jasmine looked down at her hands, then said, "Michael cheated on me too." Jessica blinked. "What?" "About 2 months after I moved in, I noticed he was distant. I thought it was because of the divorce. I tried to be supportive. Then I found messages on his tablet. Someone named Monica. Photos. Same style he used with me." Jessica leaned back, stunned. "You're saying he started cheating on you with someone else?" Jasmine nodded, her voice raw. "He told me I was too emotional, that I brought drama, that I wasn't respecting his space. He started coming home late, making excuses, just like he used to with you." Jessica felt no joy in hearing this. No triumph, just confirmation. "I thought I had something better with him," Jasmine whispered. "But I was just the next version of what he always does." Jessica shook her head slowly. "You thought you won him, Jasmine, but you were just the next chapter of his pattern." "I know," she said, "and I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve that. I just needed you to know that you were never the problem. He was." Jessica stared at her, eyes clear and steady. "I knew that before you came here." Jasmine's lips quivered. "I'm sorry, Jessica. Really?" Jessica didn't respond immediately. She let the silence sit heavy between them. "I hope you heal, Jasmine," she said at last, "but you'll do it somewhere else. This chapter is closed." Jasmine stood slowly, eyes shining with unshed tears. "Take care of yourself." "You too," Jessica said softly, and then watched her walk away. When the door clicked shut, Jessica stood in the quiet for a long moment, heart beating not with anger, but with a strange, full calm. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't vengeful. She was free. That evening, Kyle handed her a drawing he made in school. It was of a house with a big tree and a stick figure mom holding kid's hand. "That's you and me," he said proudly. Jessica smiled and knelt beside him. "It's beautiful." "I wrote something too," he added, flipping the paper over. It read in shaky little letters, "Home is where my mom is." Jessica's throat tightened. She pulled him into her arms and held him close. After Kyle went to bed, Jessica sat outside with a cup of chamomile tea. The stars were out, bright and scattered like reminders that light still existed even in darkness. She thought about the past few years, not with regret, but with recognition. She had loved a man who never truly saw her. She had tried to fix what wasn't hers to fix. She had been hurt, humiliated, dismissed, but she had also rebuilt herself from those ashes. She didn't need an apology to feel complete. She didn't need a new relationship to feel loved. She didn't even need revenge to feel powerful. She had everything she needed inside her own resilience, her own integrity, her own new beginning. She sipped the tea and closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving. She was living, and she was just getting started. 2 months later, Jessica stood at the edge of a new season, autumn leaves dusting the sidewalks in shades of amber and crimson. Her street, once a backdrop for pain and sleepless nights, now felt calmer. More hers. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. Michael hadn't returned. Not to the house, not to Kyle, not even for the last box of his things that Jessica had eventually dropped off at his office herself. She left it with the receptionist. No note, no drama, just closure. Kyle was adapting, resilient as ever. Kids had a way of bouncing back when love surrounded them, and Jessica made sure he never felt the cracks between the adults. One afternoon, as she packed Kyle's lunch for a school field trip, her phone buzzed. It was a message from a number she didn't recognize. "Hi, Jessica. It's Monica. I know this is strange, but can we talk?" Jessica stared at the screen. Monica, the new woman. The one Michael had moved on to after Jasmine. The one who had unknowingly stepped into the same trap both Jessica and Jasmine had once fallen into. Jessica hesitated for a long moment before replying. "Why do you want to talk to me?" A few minutes later, "Because I didn't know what he was doing. I found out about everything. And I think you deserve to know how it all ended." Jessica had sworn to herself she was done with these detours. But something in Monica's message wasn't laced with the delusion Jasmine had once clung to. It wasn't smug. It was sad. They agreed to meet at a small coffee shop downtown. Jessica arrived first and took a seat by the window. She wasn't nervous. She was curious. Monica walked in wearing a navy blazer, her blonde hair pulled back, face tired but kind. She looked like someone who had fought through something and maybe was still fighting. "Jessica," she asked gently. Jessica stood and extended her hand. "Monica." They sat. "I appreciate you agreeing to this," Monica began. Jessica nodded. "I didn't think I would, but here we are." Monica took a deep breath. "I didn't know he was still involved with Jasmine when we met." He said he was divorced, that he'd gone through hell with his ex-wife, that he was starting over. Jessica smiled tightly. He always paints himself as the victim. It's his first move. Monica sighed. At first, he was charming, attentive. He brought flowers, made dinner, said he wanted something real. But within months, everything changed. He became distant, moody, accused me of not trusting him. Jessica raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, he said you were too dramatic? Too insecure. Monica gave a hollow laugh, word for word. Jessica sat back, watching this woman unravel a pattern Jessica had memorized years ago. I found out about Jasmine when she called me one night. Said she used to be with him, that she recognized my name on some Facebook comment. At first, I thought she was lying. Then I found his second phone. Jessica's face hardened. Still up to that trick. Monica nodded. Texts to other women. Flirty messages. Photos. Some of them were vile. Jessica didn't ask for details. She already knew what that trail of digital betrayal looked like. When I confronted him, Monica said he turned it all around, said I had been spying, that I was paranoid. Then he stormed out. 2 days later, I got served with a cease and desist letter from him, accusing me of harassment. Jessica's eyes widened. He tried to legally silence you? I have no idea how many women he's done this to, Monica whispered. He makes them fall, poisons them with love, then buries the mess with threats or manipulation. Jessica exhaled slowly. He's not just a cheater. He's a serial emotional abuser. Monica nodded, her voice tight. He's dangerous. Not in the way people think. Not with fists, but with silence. With gaslighting. With turning people against each other. Jessica leaned forward. Did he ever talk about Kyle? Monica blinked. Once. He said you were poisoning the kid against him. That you wouldn't let him visit. I offered to help, actually. Said maybe he should fight for custody. But he shut it down. Jessica frowned. He never really wanted to be a father. Just like the idea of being wronged. Monica looked down, then met Jessica's eyes. I'm seeing a therapist now. I blocked him. Changed my number. But he still leaves notes on my windshield. Jessica's heart clenched. You need to be careful. I am. And I've documented everything. I'm thinking about filing a restraining order. Jessica reached across the table and placed her hand on Monica's. Do it. Don't let him ghost through your life again. You deserve peace. Monica nodded, eyes glistening. I'm sorry you went through this. You didn't deserve any of it. None of us did, Jessica said softly. But I'm not broken anymore. They sat there in silence, two women who had once been strangers, but were now woven together by pain and truth. There was no jealousy between them, no blame, just a mutual understanding, like survivors pulling each other out of the same flood. As Jessica walked back to her car, the sun was setting behind the city skyline. She looked up at the orange glow, and instead of feeling weighed down by the past, she felt grounded. The truth had finally been spoken. By her, by Jasmine, by Monica. And now, Michael's twisted web was unraveling faster than he could spin a new one. Jessica didn't need vengeance. She had something far more powerful now. Clarity, and it was carrying her straight into her next chapter. Jessica sat at her kitchen counter with a mug of herbal tea, watching Kyle through the sliding glass doors. He was in the backyard, tossing a football with the neighbor's son, laughing, his hair messy, cheeks flushed. That laughter, the pure, uninhibited kind, was her favorite soundtrack. It reminded her that everything she had endured had a purpose. She wasn't the same woman who had once cried into that same mug, in that same kitchen, begging the universe to explain why the man she loved had turned into a stranger. Now, her house felt like hers again, not just in name or in paperwork, but in energy. She had repainted the walls, removed the framed photos of her and Michael that once lined the staircase. Where their wedding photo had hung, she'd placed a canvas Kyle had painted bold, messy colors in no particular pattern. It was perfect. One Sunday morning, while clearing out the last storage bin in the garage, Jessica found something unexpected. It was a journal, hers from 7 years ago. The spine was worn, pages bent. She opened it, flipping through entries written during the early years of her marriage. Her handwriting was softer back then, hopeful. He made pancakes this morning, said he wants 3 kids. I can't stop smiling. Michael kissed my forehead when I fell asleep on the couch. I feel safe with him. Jessica's throat tightened. That girl, whoever she was, believed in love, in forever. She didn't know she was building a future with a man who could mimic warmth, but never truly hold it. She turned to the last entry. It was unfinished, just a sentence. Something feels off lately. He's always on his phone. I'm probably overthinking. Jessica gently closed the journal and placed it in the donate pile. She didn't need to hold on to shadows. Later that week, Jasmine called. The 2 women spoke occasionally now. Cordial, honest, never pretending to be friends, but respecting the trenches they had both crawled through. I heard from someone that Michael got fired, Jasmine said. Jessica didn't respond immediately. She didn't feel the spike of satisfaction she thought she might. Instead, she asked, why? Apparently, he was reported by another female coworker for inappropriate texts. HR let him go quietly, severance package and all. Jessica exhaled. That sounds like him. Jasmine paused. Do you think he'll ever stop? Jessica thought for a moment. No, because men like him don't heal. They just rotate their victims. There was silence on the line. Then Jasmine said, I'm going to a support group for women who've dealt with narcissistic partners. It's helped. I'm glad, Jessica said, truly meaning it. You should come one day, Jasmine added. You might be surprised how many stories sound just like yours. I might, Jessica replied. One day. The next morning, Jessica opened her laptop and began drafting something she had thought about for months, a personal blog. Not just about her experience, but about healing, about learning to breathe again after emotional suffocation. She titled her first post, I was the wife, she was the mistress. Now we're both free. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming her voice. The post went live that evening. Within 2 days, it had been shared over 10,000 times. Women from all over the country began commenting, some sharing their own stories, others thanking her for giving words to the pain they hadn't yet named. Jessica read each one with a mix of heartache and purpose. One message from a woman named Elaine in Texas stood out. I left my husband last year. He sounds just like yours. I thought I was crazy. Reading your story helped me realize I'm not. Thank you. Jessica responded, You were never crazy. Just trusting. That's not a flaw. That line stayed with her. So much of what she once saw as weakness, crying, questioning, clinging, was simply her human heart trying to hold on to love. But now she understood. Trusting the wrong person didn't make her foolish. It made her brave enough to love fully. And surviving that betrayal made her unstoppable. One evening, after Kyle had gone to bed, Jessica received another email from someone she hadn't heard from in months. Michael. The subject line read, I owe you something. She hesitated, finger hovering over the trackpad. Then curiosity got the better of her. The message was short. Jessica, I'm not expecting a response. I just needed to say I was wrong. Not just once, but repeatedly. With you, with Kyle, with everyone. You were the best part of my life. And I destroyed that. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I hope you're happy now. Michael. Jessica stared at the words, trying to decipher the motive. It wasn't an apology wrapped in charm. It felt different. She didn't reply. Not because she wasn't moved, but because she didn't need to. She had already forgiven him, not for his sake, but for hers. She closed her laptop and walked outside. The stars were out. The wind was soft, and inside her chest there was no longer a storm. Just peace. Tomorrow, she'd take Kyle to the beach. Just the 2 of them. No ghosts trailing behind. No old wounds reopening. Just a mother and her son. Laughing. Living. Healing out loud. The late August sun filtered through the gauzy curtains of Jessica's bedroom, casting warm stripes across the floor. A soft breeze stirred the room, carrying with it the scent of salt water and sunscreen, remnants of yesterday's trip to the beach with Kyle. He'd laughed for hours, digging holes, racing waves, asking questions about the clouds. He was 9 now, and his laughter sounded deeper, but it still held the same innocence Jessica had always fought to protect. She stood in front of the mirror, her hair tied up, makeup minimal. For the first time in years, she saw a woman she admired looking back at her. Her eyes didn't carry that same dull heaviness anymore. The sharp lines of worry on her forehead had softened. Her smile, small but real, was no longer masked. It was hers. Downstairs, Kyle was finishing his cereal while humming to himself. He paused when he saw his mother come in. "You look pretty," he said through a mouthful of Cheerios. Jessica laughed. "Thanks, buddy. You've got peanut butter on your cheek." He wiped it with the back of his hand, proudly. "I'm good now." "Perfect," she nodded. They had their rhythm now. School drop-offs, weekend adventures, movie nights with popcorn and pillow forts. Every piece of their life, while not perfect, was deeply, intentionally theirs. Later that day, Jessica sat across from a woman named Ellen in a local cafe. Ellen was in her early 40s, calm and thoughtful, with eyes that seemed to read between words. Ellen ran a nonprofit for single mothers rebuilding their lives after divorce or emotional abuse. She had read Jessica's blog and reached out about collaborating. "I don't think you realize how powerful your voice is," Ellen said. "Your story isn't just yours. It's a map for others trying to find their way out." Jessica stirred her coffee, thoughtful. "I still feel like I'm figuring it out myself." Ellen smiled. "Exactly. And that's why people will listen. Because you're not preaching from a mountaintop. You're walking beside them." Jessica agreed to speak at one of the organization's small gatherings the following month. It terrified her, standing in front of strangers, exposing the wounds she had barely finished dressing. But it also thrilled her. Because this wasn't about shame anymore. It was about rising. That night, as Kyle slept and the house grew quiet, Jessica opened her laptop and began outlining her talk. She didn't start with Michael's betrayal or the night he left, or even the envelope she had handed him during Thanksgiving. She started with a question. What if your breaking point was actually your becoming point? And then she told them about the silence. About the way betrayal isn't always loud. It sometimes tiptoes in, slowly suffocating you with neglect, with lies disguised as routine. She wrote about the night. She realized she didn't want her son to grow up believing that love meant swallowing pain, that loyalty meant erasing yourself. She wrote about Jasmine, not to shame her, but to show how women, too, can be conditioned to betray each other when love is reduced to competition. And she wrote about the beauty of starting over, not in some dramatic Hollywood way, but in the simple acts. Repainting a wall, sleeping without checking someone's phone, learning how to laugh again without feeling guilty. Weeks passed, and the day of the speaking event arrived. Jessica stood at the front of a small community center room, 30 women seated in folding chairs before her. Some were clutching tissues, others clutching coffee cups. All were listening. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment, then erupted in applause, not polite or restrained, but raw and warm. Afterward, a woman approached her, mid-30s, soft-spoken. "I stayed for too long," the woman whispered, "because I thought leaving would break me. But hearing you, I think staying is what's been breaking me." Jessica reached out and held her hand. "Then let's stop breaking." That evening, as she drove home, Kyle asleep in the back seat, Jessica felt something settle in her chest. Not just peace, not just closure. Purpose. She didn't need to prove anything to Michael. She didn't need to make him regret or beg. He could spiral, apologize, remarry, or vanish. It no longer affected her peace. Her life was no longer centered around being someone's wife. It was about being her son's protector, her own advocate, a lighthouse for others lost in the fog she once drowned in. One Sunday afternoon, as they were planting flowers in the backyard, Kyle looked up. "Mom." "Yeah. Do you think you'll ever get married again?" Jessica paused, brushing dirt from her hands. "Maybe, if the right person comes along." Kyle nodded. "He has to be funny. And like superheroes." Jessica smiled. "That's non-negotiable." They laughed and the wind picked up, carrying the smell of fresh earth and possibility. That evening, Jessica wrote her final blog post. I used to think survival meant staying quiet, forgiving fast, loving harder. Now, I know survival is building something better with what's left. To anyone reading this, I want you to know your story isn't over. And you are not broken. You are being remade. She clicked publish and closed the laptop. The chapter was done, and ahead of her stretched a blank page, full of light, full of truth, full of Jessica.